Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, وَذَرُوا ظَاهِرَ الْإِثْمِ وَبَاطِنَهُ. And the Shaykh says that Zaahiri sins are those that a person is able to see physically. And Baatini sins are those which are between a person and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And only a person himself knows about them. And we'll explain this to you using a certain example, that not lowering your gaze, looking at the opposite gender, who's not your mahram, is a Zaahiri sin. So not lowering your gaze is a Zaahiri sin. But the Baatini sin, which is connected to this act, is shahwa. So the lust which is in your heart is the Baatini sin, while as you're not lowering your gaze is the Zaahiri sin. And then the Shaykh says something very, very interesting, subhanAllah, and these are the kinds of things which you can only learn with somebody who's really specialized in suluk. And the Shaykh says that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us to leave both Zaahiri and Baatini sins. But Zaahiri sins in this ayah are mentioned first. وَذَرُوا ظَاهِرَ الْإِثْمِ وَبَاطِنَهُ. So Zaahiri sins are mentioned first. Therefore, the first sins that you should leave are those which are the Zaahiri sins. And if you leave the Zaahiri sins, it becomes easier for you to leave the Baatini sins. Now, if someone says that, Shaykh, it's very, very difficult for me to remove the shahwa from my heart, to remove the lust from my heart. So, the prescription that we give for this disease is start lowering your gaze first. Start avoiding those places where, unfortunately, you'll have to see things which you're not allowed to see. And when you start correcting your zahir, your outside, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will make it easy for you to rectify your heart. Now, what's the effect of sinning? And the Shaykh says that because of sins, the heart becomes enveloped in darkness. Conversely, if one does good deeds, the heart becomes illuminated. And he says that just like a cancer afflicts a part of our body, similarly, if we don't stop sinning, this will spread like cancer. And the heart will feel the effects of sinning, which is that the heart becomes worried. No matter how much a person tries to hide his sins will never allow someone's heart to experience peace and tranquility. In some way or the other, in some form or the other, sins will always cause someone to be worried. And a person can try as much as they want to try to hide their sins, to do their sins in a place where they think that nobody will see them. Nobody will see that they're sinning. But even so, even if you try and commit sins in a place where nobody else is able to see you, remember that your heart will never attain tranquility. Your heart will never attain peace until you leave sinning. Now, some people say, but Shaykh, I'm really not committing sins that are big sins. Shaykh, I'm really just committing sins that are small sins. And Ibn al-Qayyim rahimahullah said something very, very beautiful about this, which our Shaykh quotes. Ibn al-Qayyim rahimahullah said that don't look at whether the sin is big or small, but rather look at which Lord I am disobeying. So don't look at whether the sin is big or small, but look at the azma of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the Shaykh said that a small sin is like a small scorpion, and a big sin is like a big scorpion. Subhanallah. Ajib. That a small sin is like a small scorpion, and a big sin is like a big scorpion. But amazingly, whether the scorpion is big or the scorpion is small, both types of scorpions, poison is fatal. And so we need to remove this waswasa, this thought from our heart that, this is just a small sin that I'm committing. I'm not really committing a big sin. Because what we need to fix our gaze upon is the greatness of the one against whom we're sinning. The greatness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.